Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, what would happen if your mobile phone killed you?
We are tonight's entertainment.
I would rather watch Beautician and the Beast.
People don't forget.
And here we go.
Made for movies.
This is the Made for Movies podcast. I am your host, Eric Russo, and back with me on a very special, almost live edition of our podcast, Aaron Wolf. How you feeling after the weekend?
I am struggling, to say the least. It was very fun. I will leave it at that. But little amounts of sleep and lots of travel, not always conducive to a happy Monday. But nonetheless, I think I've woken up by now. And on this special Monday late release episode, let's get right into it, man. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Special shout out to TV Ron. Got married over the weekend. That's where we were. And that's why it's getting released a little bit late. Special shout out to Wolf, who had a tremendous Best Man speech, one of the best I've ever personally seen, and better than most of the movies we've watched in the last 2 years. So
I never thought I'd find another person who cared as much as what other people think until I met Greg. I started off that way. I thought
it was the exact Wedding Crashers speech from Rachel McAdams, which is one of my favorites of all time.
I was torn between that and old school Luke Wilson. You think you found true love till a couple blindfolded people come out of your bathroom naked like a goddamn magic show. That one always pretty good, too.
That would have been good. Not so much as good for their families, but good for me and you and good for this podcast. I was just really proud of you. There was no Batman voice used, although it was threatened multiple times that you would bring it out.
I'll even keep it off of this episode just for you.
I highly doubt that. I will say something that will trigger you, and where's the trigger? Where's the trigger?
Oh, man. That was too easy.
Don't do it.
I wasn't going to
do it.
Nope.
Save it for later.
I wasn't going to do it on that one. Don't worry.
But let's jump in because it is a very special Monday, June 14th. 25 years ago, a little movie came out called The Cable Guy, released in 1996, directed by none other than Ben Stiller and starring one of your favorites, Jim Carrey. Wolf, I can't forget to mention Matthew Broderick, and Leslie Mann is also in this. But Wolf, what do you think of this movie? Has it aged well, and where does it rank in your movie world?
Yeah, honestly, I think as far as I don't know if you'd call it a dark comedy. I kind of guess I would call it a dark comedy. It's very, very, very hilarious, even to this day. The cable companies seem to still operate the same way, so it's kind of held up pretty well, whether it's giving you a 9-hour window before they show up or it just being a little bit weird each time they're in your house messing around with stuff. But it's one of Jim Carrey's best performances of all time, and honestly, I think it's one of Matthew Broderick's best performances of all time, just his reactions to everything. So the Leslie Mann thing is just kind of one of her first movies, it sounds like, kind of getting into the scene before Big Daddy, and I would rewatch Cable Guy. It's in a top 100 comedy list for me for sure.
I like it. Yeah, it's definitely one of those movies. When I saw it, I was 6 years old. I thought it was hilarious. I know a lot of people didn't like it. Of course, I was laughing at very surface level Jim Carrey mannerism type jokes, where when you rewatch it, there's a lot of hidden dark humor in here that is just priceless.
Yes.
This movie deals with everything from mental illness to just very weird and strange people, and it'll always be one of my favorites. I don't remember the place they go to eat. What's it called? Where they're like battling each other.
I know the scene.
medieval times.
Yeah, medieval times. Yeah,
medieval times. Still one of my all-time favorite movie scenes with an awesome Silence of the Lambs reference. Can't say if you have not seen this movie, I can highly recommend that you will enjoy it. It has aged like fine wine, but I would think that by its 50-year anniversary, people will be like, "What's cable?"
Yes. There'll be no more such thing after 2040 or whatever.
All right, let's move on into our always interesting box office update. We have someone taking back their number one spot. A Quiet Place Part 2, who finished second last week, moves back into the number one spot with $11.6 million, dropped only 39%, so awesome hold. It's at $108 million overall and over $200 million worldwide, so it is chugging along. Keep in mind the original did $180 million, so it will not catch that, but when you consider a pandemic, I think it's in really good shape moving forward. To round out the rest of the top 5, we had In the Heights with $11.4 million. Very disappointing, by the way. It was supposed to do $20 million, so Warner Brothers not happy about that one. We had Peter Rabbit 2, Wolf's second favorite movie of all time, behind the original Peter Rabbit, did $10.4 million. The Conjuring, in its second weekend, did $10 million, and Cruella did $6.7 million. So, Wolf, any thoughts on this list before we move on?
Yeah, I think wasn't The Heights also simultaneously released on HBO Max as well?
It was, but it did not do very good on there either. So people are saying they can't use that as an excuse.
Okay.
I think what it comes down to is the trailers didn't really show much of the plot, and there's really not a marquee actor to carry this musical, but it did get tremendous reviews and a lot of great buzz, so it's a little shocking to me that it didn't make a little more money.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because it was pretty critically acclaimed so far as the reviews, and I will probably see it because I did like Hamilton, and anything from Lin-Manuel Miranda is usually pretty good. The main actor who's in it is actually in Hamilton. He does a great job. But yeah, like it's still surprising, but I still think people are a little hesitant about going out to see movies they don't quite know anything about.
Yeah.
Which kind of stinks because, again, a recurring theme we talk about every week is like, give me something new, give me some new content, something original. And
Exactly.
This is it. But people are just like, nope, I want Batman 40. So
yeah, no, I think you're right, and I do think long term, In the Heights is a movie that will do well for HBO Max. It just may not be a movie that people were clamoring to see the second it came out. You know, it's beautiful outside, people want to be out, so maybe it'll do really well during the weekdays this week, and it'll catch up a little bit. But yeah, that's a movie to me. Musicals are probably better for streaming in general. I don't really see too many of them breaking the bank, but we should see. You know, I think if you attach a huge actor, anything can make money with the right plot. True. But let's move on into our top 5 news stories of the week. A little bit of a slow week this week, but we are having some updates on things we've talked about in the past. We'll start with number 5, which relates to Wolf's favorite piece of IP of all time. Jurassic World Dominion is going to be having a 6-minute prologue playing with IMAX prints of Fast 9 coming out on June 25th. So, Wolf, I ask you, are you excited to watch the prologue, and will I be able to get you to review Jurassic World Dominion?
So I have a little bit of work to do on the review side. I'll have to watch the newest Jurassic World. I haven't quite gotten to it yet. I did watch the first Jurassic World. But I will watch it. I'll give it its due. Am I excited about the 6-minute prologue? I imagine there's going to be some kind of T-Rex and a very disastrous opening and a lot of people dying and a lot of dinosaurs dying. So you're welcome to everybody out there. You can save yourself 6 minutes and just enjoy Fast 9. Not even worry about it. But yeah, I'm not sure if they're bringing back everybody for Dominion, if it's, you know, Chris Pratt and all the main characters, but obviously it's a good enough cast to draw some interest at the very least. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, so this will be bringing back the entire cast from the second movie. I don't remember the little girl that's in the second movie. She will be in it, as well as the entire original cast. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum. They will be teaming up in this movie. So that gives me a lot of hope that this will kind of end at least the original franchise. Of course, these movies will always come out. It's one of the best IPs in the world, and for the most part, most of the movies, even the bad ones, are, if nothing else, like laughably entertaining. Like the second and third movies,
especially number 2 and
funny.
3.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that you are already wrong, though, as far as what the prologue is. It will take place 65 million years ago, and it will introduce the new dinosaur villain that's based off a real dinosaur in a battle with the T-Rex will be what the prologue is about.
I at least got it half right. There is definitely a T-Rex involved.
There's always a T-Rex, but that would be like a Jaws movie not having a shark
That's
at this
true.
point.
That's
so.
True.
We will move on. Number 4 story, wrapping up something that we just talked about last week. Neither of us came up with this idea, but John Wick 4 has officially added its star Bill Skarsgård to its action-packed sequel. He does not have a role specified, but rumors are saying that he will be one of the villains in the movie. Wolf, what do you think of this casting, and do you want to see him play the main villain?
This casting, I don't think, could be more spot on for someone to play a villain for the rest of their life in cinema. It will be him. He just has the look of a very notorious human being, and until the last hour of It Chapter 2, his performance as Pennywise was spectacular. And I'm greatly looking forward to seeing him be in this world and what he'll be. I would guess he'll probably play like the second in command, or the second toughest guy compared to John Wick, to a bigger boss of some kind. So, but if he was the main villain, I wouldn't be disappointed whatsoever. And I think we could get that ultimate showdown at the end of kind of someone equaling what looks like John Wick's kind of physique and probably skills at the same time. So I think this one is amazing, and it makes me want to watch John Wick 4 even more than just seeing Keanu Reeves at the end of this year in The Matrix riding on the back of a motorcycle with Trinity. So very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I really like him as an actor. I kind of agree with you that that's the type of role he'll be, is like a secondary villain. I don't really know if I've ever seen him perform martial arts. I know he was in that Charlize Theron movie that was very similar to John Wick. I want to say Atomic Blonde, it was called, where he played the villain in that.
Sure.
So going to be very interesting to see how he is portrayed in this movie, because he is like 6'5", or 18 feet tall if you've watched It Chapter 2. But nonetheless, I think that they're going in a great direction with this series casting. They're casting people who are super talented that aren't necessarily box office draws, which at the fourth movie, I'm always a little worried that they'll start doing things like we were saying, even though we want to see it, like Jason Statham and bigger actors like that. Michael Fassbender, I know, is one you said. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a better route to go to make sure that these movies maintain their artistic integrity, you could say.
Absolutely.
For a John Wick movie anyway. Let's move into the top three, though. We have a story I think you're looking forward to. So it's reported that the Ted TV series is coming to us from Seth MacFarlane, based on the movies and ordered up by Peacock. Wolf, are you excited to see Ted return? And do you want to see it be just a completely original take, or do you want it to be a sequel to the movies?
Yeah, I have a little bit of mixed feelings here, because Ted 1 by itself would have been enough for this franchise, and I think Ted 2 is probably one of the most dumpster fiery movies of all time. Just awful and not funny, really. Family Guy, having been a fan since Family Guy season 1, always excited to see what Seth MacFarlane can turn out. And even his like fake Star Trek show isn't that bad. So he's obviously got the writing ability and the staff around him to write it, to make it funny. I would really obviously like to see, like an original Ted 1 cast, all come back for a series like this, but I don't think there's any way that will happen. Mark Wahlberg's obviously busy with 50 billion things, including restaurants and gyms and all that shit. So honestly, I'm going to have no expectations for this, just so that I'm not sorely disappointed. So I'm not going into it with anything, but of course I'll give it a watch, because, comedy is probably my number one thing that I will watch. So we'll see.
I'm actually pretty optimistic for it, just because I think, like you said, the second Ted movie is terrible, but where the second Ted movie goes wrong is it tries to extend the story from the first movie, like Hangover 2, where it would have been much better off just taking Ted and putting him in a completely new scenario with new actors and everything. So I think we know Mark Wahlberg will not be in the TV series. He may appear as like a passing of the Ted, so to speak. But I think that because Seth MacFarlane is so good at writing TV, like you said, I just can't see it not being funny, especially if they have a little more time to let something develop. And if it's just a weekly thing with him telling jokes, like there's so many bad shows out that I'm sure we'll get a couple decent laughs out of this. And we'll see where it goes. Yeah. Let's move into the top two, though. I know now we're getting into some stuff you're really excited about. The Book of Boba Fett will be actually diving into Boba Fett's history, including the time between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And Robert Rodriguez will be directing several episodes of the show. So, Wolf, are you excited to see them go into the past? And just overall, how excited are you that this show's coming out?
This is one I will definitely say I'm excited for. My expectations are through the roof, and I think with kind of Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau being a little bit more involved. Obviously, that will help. But Robert Rodriguez being a director is clearly going to be very exciting because he does pretty cool stuff as well. But that's what I want most out of a Boba Fett series, is to see what he's like before we even know about Star Wars back in 1977. Like, what was he doing at A New Hope? What was he doing Empire Strikes Back, etc.? Before Empire Strikes Back, obviously, and Return of the Jedi when he dies, in so many words. But, yeah, I think any continuation of the storyline from The Mandalorian, and then I think a big bonus to this is that we won't have to worry about anybody being de-aged because, oh, hey, he wears a helmet. So we can have the same actor go back and play that same, character at any time period, as long as he's not fat, basically. So that should be pretty interesting. Yeah, very excited for this.
Yeah, I agree. I'm actually more interested in this as a series in the past than I am as a series in the future. The Book of Boba Fett with him, basically being the new Jabba the Hutt, basically. It doesn't interest me too much, but going back and filling in the blanks, I would have preferred him to be dead. I know you're a huge Mandalorian fan. It's one of your favorite shows. I think it's a good show. I think that people have blinders on when watching it because you're comparing it to Rise of Skywalker, which is one of the worst Star Wars movies of all time. So I do think it's really good, but I do need a little bit more from these stories as far as expanding and not just relying on the same things over and over, like a Baby Yoda, who is adorable, but just curious to see, can they actually take his story and expand it and make it interesting to me anyway. But I think the stuff with the flashbacks is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
They always seem to handle any sort of stuff like that. There'll probably be some set pieces that we recognize from the movies, which is always cool to see, like a modern take. Empire is my favorite movie, so anything that gets included from that era is always going to score points for me. But let's move into any last comments on this, by the way?
I would only say that, like the first 3 Star Wars movies released, episodes 4 through 6, are the best 3 of all of them, and it is always exciting to me. One of the main reasons I do like Mandalorian so much is because it's right after Return of the Jedi, only 5 years later. So that universe we don't know anything about because it skips 30 years from there until Force Awakens. So
a lot of potential,
tons of stuff in there that it also has me pretty excited for that, as him kind of taking over the smuggling ring and whatnot. So we'll see. I think it'll be good.
Yeah, they'll definitely be able to fill in some gaps over the next 30 years. And like Star Wars, the cool thing is they can always keep going backwards, so they'll never run out of content.
Right.
But let's move into the top story of the week. Debatably, this one we just did for some laughs, but Macgruber officially has a Peacock series coming at the end of this year, has added some awesome cast members. So everyone from the first movie is returning, including Ryan Phillippe, but it has added Sam Elliott as Macgruber's dad, Lawrence Fishburne as his general, and Mickey Rourke in a villain role who comes out of the shadows. Wolf, how excited are you for the return of Macgruber, and which of these cast members excites you the most?
I think if you could believe it, I'm more excited for this than I am for the Boba Fett series, and that's saying a lot because I've been a Star Wars fan since I could read and write. So when it comes to that cast, I think Sam Elliott as his dad is going to be a home run of epic proportions that will be the funniest part of the show, and I can't wait to see that beautiful mustache on my screen for quite some time. But yeah, Macgruber might be one of the most underrated comedies of all time. I don't think it gets talked about nearly enough, probably because it's very gross, but you can't beat him for humping a Force ghost in midair at a cemetery. No one can ever top that. And
for 5 minutes.
Exactly. And as long as they do that in this series at least once per season, I'll be completely thrilled. And I can't wait to see some throats get ripped out.
I'm just reading this article now, and I have to bring this point up. So Mickey Rourke's character name is Brigadier Commander Enos Queeth, Queeth. So
following right along with Val Kilmer's famous Cunth. It's one of the best characters ever, and Mickey Rourke looks just like him in that movie, so it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, this really has made my day even more than it was before. Yeah, Sam Elliott, he played the other Ron Swanson in Parks and Rec.
The hippie Ron Swanson. Yep,
hippie Ron Swanson. Yeah, I can't wait for this series. The movie is a hidden gem. Definitely watch it if you have not seen it. It's one of those movies that I could see a lot of people not liking, like just thinking is too stupid.
Yes.
It does have that SNL vibe to it, but I think it's hilarious, and I really look forward to a full series, and hopefully we get multiple seasons because there's tons and tons of potential to keep this running for a few years for sure.
Definitely.
But are you ready to move on to something that is not so cool?
Yes.
So the Why Is This Happening news story of the week comes to us from the Farrelly brothers. They are bringing back Kingpin, making a sequel. Although there is no cast announced, we can assume that Woody Harrelson and hopefully not, but potentially other people like Bill Murray may return in the movie. I think he will not do that, though, personally. But Wolf, only one quick question to ask. Why is this happening?
It's a recurring theme on the Why Is This Happening of the week. Why does this need to exist? There's nothing wrong with the first Kingpin. One of Bill Murray's best comedic performances of all time as Ernie McCracken, Big Ern. I've done the split in a bowling alley, just like Woody Harrelson has. I actually split my pants once doing that, so it was pretty funny. But it's just one of those things. Like the Farrelly brothers don't make good sequels. We already found that out from Dumb and Dumber 2.
Yeah,
and it really bums me out that we just can't write a new comedy about bowling. Like, I'll go watch any other new comedy about bowling, no matter what it is. Just tell me if it's the Farrelly brothers. We know they can write good stuff from time to time, or at least they did from 1991 to 1999, and then that's it. But yeah, this one it doesn't hurt me as much as last week's. But why is this happening?
Yeah, I don't have much to say on this. It's funny you say you would go see any other bowling movie. That makes you the only person to say that because Kingpin didn't make any money. I think it made about $30 million at the worldwide box office. So we're talking about a movie that is good for sure, the original, but it's not a movie that made a lot of money like Dumb and Dumber. Clearly justified a sequel because it's one of the most popular comedies of all time. That's not Kingpin. No one's going to see this. This movie has streaming written all over it. Put it on Peacock or Amazon next to Coming to America, Wolf's all-time favorite comedy. But no, let's move on. I really don't even want to talk about it. Hopefully it doesn't actually happen. I don't know why people keep giving the Farrelly brothers money. They have not. When's the last good movie they made? I couldn't even tell you.
I couldn't either. Maybe it's something about Mary. That might be it.
I think they directed that movie with Ben Stiller where he goes on vacation with his like new wife. I forget the name of it, but then he ends up Heartbreak Kid. Yeah, so I like that movie kind of, but that was like 15 years ago now as well. So I think it's time for them to sit the next couple plays out.
Agreed.
But let's move on. We have a couple reviews to go over this week. We usually do some sort of weekly recommendations. This week will be a little bit different. So Wolf did not want to see The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I could not convince him, and I was really hoping that on this podcast this week, I would be recommending it to everyone for how awesome it was. Some of my fears were realized that James Wan, who did not return, this movie is not very good, so I'm going to make it my weekly do not recommendation of the week. So Michael Chavez directs this movie starring Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, which looks back on a demonic case where it was the first case ever that someone pleaded not guilty because of possession of the devil. I thought the premise going into this movie, it looked really funny to me as far as like a court case. Not funny, but just interesting that it was so different from the other movies, and I actually thought it had a lot of potential. Having said that, it does not use any of these great ideas. Some things I did like about it, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are fantastic. I'm not mad I watched it, considering I'm such a big fan of the series, kind of how I feel after some of these Fast and the Furious sequels, but I just cannot recommend it to anyone that just likes scary movies because it's not scary. There's not one jump scare in the movie, at least, none that actually work. Movie starts out pretty good and everything downhill from there. I definitely would have felt like if I had you watch this movie, it would have set our friendship back a couple years. And I'm glad I only have a few cards I can play with you. And I'm like, hey, I need you to watch this movie for the podcast. I know you don't want to. It's scary. I think I'm really glad I dodged the bullet on this one because I think you would have burned the entire deck of cards that I had after that. But that's really all I have on this.
It's pretty impressive, the ones that you've actually gotten me to watch, including It and It Chapter 2. It Chapter 2 almost sealed it right then and there, but that's okay.
It almost did. I think what helped It Chapter 2 is that I did not try to defend it. I burned it with you. You know, we had a nice bonfire of that movie. But yeah, this one is really concerning to me as far as the Conjuring universe goes because James Wan has moved on, and it seems without him, you know, these movies have been going downhill really quick. So typically this movie is making money at the box office, but like we see with the Saw franchise, when you start making a couple bad sequels in a row, eventually people stop going to these movies. So I'm not expecting this franchise to continue on. I think they'll have spin-off series like they've been doing, but I can't imagine that we're going to get too many more of these Conjuring movies, maybe one more. But that's all I got. Wolf, any thoughts on the Conjuring universe, your favorite franchise of all time? Good riddance?
None whatsoever.
Right you are. All right, well, let's move on to something that we are excited to review. Typically, on this podcast, we review TV series at the end. But because Loki is a weekly episodic TV series, we want to be able to discuss it week to week with you guys and go over some of the spoilers, where we think the show is going to go, and just how we're feeling about this show week to week. So, Wolf, why don't you break it down for us? Who do we got directing this thing, and who's starring in it?
Yes, Loki, definitely an exciting thing to talk about. Created by Michael Waldron, directed by Kate Herron, starring, of course, Loki himself, Tom Hiddleston. Some names I'm going to butcher horribly here. Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Wunmi Mosaku, Eugene Cordero, Tara Strong, and Owen Wilson round out a wonderful cast of who we've met so far in episode 1. Titled Glorious Purpose, which sounds like something Loki would certainly say a lot.
Absolutely. So just before we get started, if you have not seen the episode, that's okay. The first part of our review is going to have completely no spoilers, just going to talk about some general things that we like, some things maybe we didn't like. But just give everyone some background. This series takes place after the Avengers Endgame. That's all we knew. Not to spoil Avengers Endgame. If you haven't seen it now, that's your problem. But Loki escapes with the Tesseract in Avengers Endgame, and it is the Loki from the 2012 Avengers timeline, not the Loki that died at the beginning of Infinity War. So that's where the series picks up, and I will ask you, Wolf, expectations going into Loki, especially after the last two series that we got from Marvel.
You hit it on the head there. That my expectations are those other two series, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Both were excellent, watchable, entertaining, had all of the good points that we were looking for out of a Marvel product, and especially a Disney Marvel product. We're seeing just high-quality movies come out left and right, and really looking forward to the upcoming movies and shows that are coming out. No question here, Loki is one of my favorite characters in the history of the MCU. Tom Hiddleston crushes it in every movie he's in, always either funny or really sad or really, really cringy and like, oh, come on, man. Like, you get that a lot. So my expectations are pretty high for this, and definitely was excited to catch the first episode for sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I like the first two shows, but I think we're both on the same page that there were some things lacking as far as importance to the overall MCU and how necessary these shows are, which is totally fine. Like, they don't need to be necessary. Just don't try to tell me that they are going to be super important and necessary and then they're not. So moving into this, I was getting a little fatigued with that idea of I want to start seeing something happen in these shows that really starts to open the door for this multiverse that they keep hinting at. And that's what I was hoping for Loki, because we knew it was going to involve some type of time travel and different universes. So I thought this was their opportunity to really make an integral part of the MCU on the TV series to get people to care. That way they're like, all right, I better start watching all these shows so that when the movies come out, you know, I'm not missing anything. So that's where we led into this, but cautiously optimistic as usual, especially from a director that has done some decent stuff on TV already, but has never done a Marvel MCU big budget movie. So I ask you, what did you think of the first episode?
Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised, and my expectations were all met. Loki, played by, again, Tom Hiddleston. His character is fascinating. His emotion, how he portrays the character, even this one, who we already knew kind of from the movies, had evolved past death and destruction and ruling and all that stuff. He goes right back, snaps right back to it, like, you can't stop me, I'm a god, that type of stuff. Like, just a killer performance. Some of the side characters, Owen Wilson, it's hard not to talk about him being bad. He's never really bad in anything. He just plays himself, basically. So he's back doing that again as Mobius M. Mobius, one of the best words in the world, or I'm sorry, names in the world. And I really, really did like the episode. It did a couple things I liked. One, if you've never seen any Loki-related thing, you're going to get caught up pretty quick, and you'll be able to watch this show without anything else. And I really thought that the pacing of the episode was really good, because they were jumping back and forth between a lot of settings, and it has to do with the plot and one of the main reasons why Owen Wilson's character exists. But the idea of time travel and stuff like that is always fascinating, and how they're addressing it in this show, I think, is very, very interesting and should reveal a ton of stuff. So I'm excited. I think the best episode, or the first episode, set us up really well.
Yeah, and I think that's where the other two shows were good, but they lack that really big pull of, wow, this is something that I've never seen before. I mean, WandaVision, sure, it had that 1950s TV show vibe, but we knew what we were getting going into this. No one had any idea what type of show Loki was going to be, and we'll get into some of that in the spoilers, but before we get there, yeah, I think this goes straight to the acting. Tom Hiddleston, Owen Wilson carry this episode. There are many scenes where it's just them talking, which is different for an MCU show. I particularly loved what they decided to do with the character of Loki, as far as taking him from the 2012 Avengers Loki. They had to do some work to bring him back to speed, and I thought those choices were particularly really well done. The world that they built is super interesting, super intriguing. I can't wait for them to start peeling back some of these layers and really diving deeper into this. They did have to explain a lot in this episode as far as how the multiverse works and how time works. So it didn't really bother me. They did some really clever things with the explanation. Particularly, this isn't much of a spoiler, but just a callback to another movie, Jurassic Park, using a cartoon video to explain how time works.
It was incredible.
It was really cool. And from there, that's pretty much all I have to say. We'll get into our scores here in a second for episode 1, but fantastic episode. What are you going to score this out at?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a straight up 9 out of 10, because I don't think I can give it a perfect score yet without seeing what is to come. But yeah, it's incredible. I strongly recommend anyone watch this, especially fans of the MCU. But even if you're not, like I said, you will be able to watch this series, and I believe you're going to have enough entertainment in it, whether it's laughs or action, that you'll get enough out of it. So yeah, 9 out of 10, strong episode.
Yeah, I'm going to go right there with you, 9 out of 10, for the exact reasons that you said. It's a first episode. It's a world-building episode. I think it has all the potential for this series to be a masterpiece, but like we've seen with the other shows, they've had some down periods as well. So, yeah, it's off to the best start by far of the other two shows, and I'm just so excited to see where it goes. I agree. I think that if you're a fan of the movies, it's must-watch. If you're not, I still think that there's enough humor here, and like that an average just general moviegoer who knows nothing about comics could find a lot of enjoyment. TV Ron's not a huge MCU guy. I recommended it to him, and I know he's super excited to watch it as well. So this is going to be their most broadly appealing show, I think, that they make in this first batch anyway.
Sure.
But let's move into some spoiler discussion, where we think the show's going to go. If you have not seen the first episode and don't want anything spoiled, please stop listening now. We'll give you a couple seconds to get out of here.
Bye.
But Wolf, let's get into it. Bye. Yeah, let's talk about some spoilers. What really stood out for you as far as the story, in this episode and where you want to see it go from here.
Yeah, I think it's amazing what we don't know about the greater Marvel universe, because no one has probably ever been able to read 100% of every comic that's come out from Marvel. So just
as you say that, we'll get some hate mail from some guy who has every
he owns
comic,
every copy.
So.
Yeah, no, yeah. I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people would even know a glimpse into this. And I'd never heard of anything like the TVA. Stands for the Time Variance Authority. A very, very interesting world where everyone seems to speak English, and it seems like an office that's in the United States. So that part is why I really didn't give it a 10. I couldn't quite say that during my score, but why would this be where and what people look like and how people sound? That's the only thing I could add. I didn't see any kind of like other creatures. Like there was no like Thanos in the TVA necessarily. Sure. But again, I'm getting kind of far into it. Like I find this to be extremely fascinating. I think it's opening up a ton of doors as to what we might expect to see in a few movies coming up, especially Spider-Man, Doctor Strange type of vibes. But yeah, like this whole idea of a time travel regulatory agency, like is very, very cool to me. And what is allowed to happen versus what's not is also something that really stands out. Like they're explaining at one point the Avengers going back and stopping Thanos 5 years later by time traveling was actually supposed to happen. Whereas Loki escaping with the Tesseract in 2012 wasn't. So like really crazy how they kind of come up with that.
I was glad that they mentioned that, because as I was watching it, that was the first thing that popped into my head when they take Loki. You know, I was already eye rolling like, well, why didn't they try to stop the Avengers? So even though it wasn't explained as to why that's the case, you know, it at least made sense to me. But yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. That's actually a really funny point you bring up about the way people look, how they basically just look like Americans. Yeah. I hope that they maybe explain that a little bit, because you're right, because Loki is not from Earth, and he is interacted with so many different creatures, so it's not like he's seeing them through a lens and that they look a certain way to everybody. He does speak English, so maybe that does have something to do with it, that we're missing. Maybe to other people they look different. So we really don't know quite if they're going to explain that, or if that's just their, you know, hey, it's Owen Wilson, so that's who we wanted to cast.
Yeah.
I would hope that they address that, but I don't think that they will. But some of the things I absolutely loved, I talked about earlier, just the journey that they take Loki on in the episode, from the 2012 evil Loki back to the Loki that we loved when he died. I thought it was really well done. One thing I admire that this movie and Avengers Endgame try to do anyway is make Thor: The Dark World a relevant sequel. Thor: The Dark World is considered by many to be one of, if not the worst MCU movie, and now it's kind of an important watch if you're rewatching this or showing someone this story from the first time, because they travel back to Thor: The Dark World in Endgame, and this movie hits on some very significant plot points from that movie that I actually did not really remember, specifically related to his mom dying. I just forgot that was in that movie.
It's literally
I've only seen it.
It's literally the only important scene in that entire movie is that Frigga gets killed by the Dark Elves. So that's it.
Yeah, and it was Loki's doing, which
right.
That's the part that I forgot. But I always admire that if you're going to have 23 movies, some of them are not going to feel as important. So shout out to them to focusing on some of the C-level movies and bringing that story kind of full circle, which is pretty cool. From there, you know, we look at where this series is going to go. They're obviously trying to get Loki's help to go after whoever is murdering all of these people. And the episode ends in a very interesting way where they're basically saying they're hunting Loki, a different Loki from a different timeline. And at the end of the episode, we see a shadowy, hooded figure, but it's not shown to be Loki, which to me was very interesting. Do you think that's Loki, or do you think that this is some sort of misdirection and it's actually a different villain that's pretending to be Loki?
It's really tough to call this, because we're dealing with something like that. One of the main points of the episode is to explain that the TVA, like Infinity Stones, have no power here. So we're talking about something that is incredibly powerful and highly, highly unknown, especially to the audience and Loki at this point. So who this could be, it could be someone impersonating him, maybe like a shapeshifter. It could be something even we've never heard of before, or it could be like a different universe Loki who's kind of even more evil than the one we've known up till 2012 at this point. So my head is going in a million different directions, which is something I love about this show because I don't want to be able to guess it easily. And if I can guess it easily, it usually means it's not a good film or TV show. So I would leave it up to my imagination at this point, but those are kind of where my head's at.
I like it. Yeah, I'm in a similar perspective on. I actually think it is going to be Tom Hiddleston. I just don't think. I think there will be more to the story. I think maybe he will be working for someone else. Maybe when he took the Tesseract, he traveled back to different points and he basically branched off multiple timelines. That's why there's multiple Lokis. And maybe in one of those timelines, he meets, a bigger villain that could play a bigger role in the MCU. I know a lot of people are talking about Krang the Conqueror, who may have actually been featured in that cartoon when they showed the three people involved with the beginning of time. So that would be really cool if it's heading there, because we do know that Krang is going to be in Ant-Man, the next Ant-Man movie. So I think that's where it'll be leading, but I'm also totally on board if Tom Hiddleston gets to play this evil Loki that we never have seen before, as well as the Loki that we love. Hopefully it doesn't look funny when he's fighting himself, like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix Reloaded, but I mean, not Keanu Reeves and Agent Smith. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have on this episode. Any last thoughts on it?
No, I am greatly looking forward to the rest of the show. I think it's going to be a hit.
Absolutely. So if you guys have any thoughts on where the story can go from here, please send them in. Next week, we'll be doing a lot of fan comments, fan questions specifically related to Loki. Keep in mind, Loki comes on Disney Plus every Wednesday for the next 5 weeks. So be sure to check it out. But that's all I have. Woof. Bye.
Bye, guys.